My name's Greg Baca, and I'm a proponent of allowing chickens here in Columbia. And I'm a homeowner and also a small business owner. When I got involved in this, one of the things that I came across was that as soon as we started talking to people, there were things that came up that people right away sort of used as excuses on why they thought maybe it wasn't such a good idea. And then as I did a little research, I found out that those same excuses kind of keep coming up over and over in all the cities that have worked on changing their laws to allow a small number of hens in town. And the four things that they come up with all the time are that chickens make too much poop, that chickens will be too expensive for the animal control people to add into their thing that they have to deal with. So enforcement, I guess. That chickens would have salmonella issues, and also that chickens would have bird flu issues. So then doing some research into those, we found out that they really are excuses because none of them are actually accurate. They're just sort of the things that people come up with right off the top of their head.
Well, you know, it's just like having a pet. You learn, you know, how much another animal may depend on you and how you really have to be responsible and take care of it. And I think that it's not just the taking care of the animal, but it's kind of seeing how the animals and the plants interact. So, you know, just here in my sort of suburban type backyard, it would be a really integrated system with animals that eat pets and then produce their waste, which is good nutrition for the plants, and then the plant leftovers can then be fed to the hens, which then create eggs which we can eat, and then we can you know, compost the hens' manure, compost the leftover eggshells, and it's just as you can see that cycle, how nature doesn't have waste products really. Nature, the waste of one part of nature becomes the feedstock for kind of the next step in the cycle, and it just keeps going around and around. So I think it's a really great illustration of how there's no waste in nature.
Yeah, so the amount of manure they produce is something that you can deal with on the land. You're not going to get large amounts of nitrogen or sulfur runoff because it's going to be absorbed into the land that you have, either onto the just square footage that you're using, into your compost pile, or onto your garden.
The poop thing, chickens, 3 chickens basically makes about as much poop per week as a cat. So if they allow 6 hens, it's very similar to somebody who has 2 cats. I mean, and the nice part is chicken manure can go in the compost, it can go in the garden, it can go in the flower bed, where cat manure should not, because cat manure actually has germs in it, diseases in it. The other one about animal control, reality has shown that all the cities who did allow chickens in town, as they've had a few years under their belt now with it, they're not getting problems. They're not getting anybody complaining. They're not getting, I won't say not anybody, but very, very few complaints. And the thing is, chickens, they just don't make noise. So who's to complain about, you know, barking? They don't get loose and bite children, or they don't get loose and chase other people's pets around. They're very, very problem-free as far as the animal control people are concerned.
Well, you know, a lot of people are afraid of the noise. Now, you know, if you just listen here, we live, that's the MKT trail right down there and the Forum wetlands, and you can hear there are noises. And earlier today, the starlings were making a lot of noise. You can hear crickets right now. Very often you can hear lawnmowers all over the place. You can hear Forum Boulevard, cars going by on that. So, you know, things make noises, but as long as you don't have roosters, and no one thinks that we should have roosters in Columbia, the noise of hens in a small flock is really not going to be, you know, even really noticeable over the other noises that are just normal in a neighborhood. Like, I just heard the mail truck pull up there, so there's always some noises, and hens are really not, if you've been around small flocks of them, they kind of cluck a little bit, but they're certainly not as noisy as the Canada geese we get out there on the wetlands in the fall.
The problem with most people not understanding chickens is that the idea of urban chickens is not the same as the idea of commercial chickens. And so urban chickens are about having a small flock, you know, which can be anywhere from 2 chickens to, say, 25 chickens, and that'll still be poundage less than, you know, 2 large dogs. And so that small number of chickens isn't going to create a loud noise. As you can see, there are 8 hens around us right now, and you can hear the dog yipping much more than you can hear 8 hens.
Salmonella was the third one, and that's primarily people associate salmonella in eggs, which there is instances out there where there has been salmonella issues involved around egg things, but primarily salmonella is a food handling issue. So it doesn't really have to do that much with chickens or eggs. It's bad food handling. But there's been salmonella outbreaks in pork, cheese, cantaloupe, tomatoes, sprouts, and eggs occasionally. So, I mean, nobody's out there saying that we shouldn't allow people to grow cantaloupes in their front yard because of salmonella. So that's just sort of a mistaken idea.
As people have become more and more aware of what's happening with our food, and that's vegetables, and then of course there are all the awful things about the way animals are treated. I don't really consider myself an animal rights activist, but I think that you have to have some basic decency in your dealing with other creatures. And I also worry a lot, I'm a pediatrician, and I worry a lot about the use of antibiotics in food. I mean, we are really trying to limit the use of antibiotics to the most appropriate uses so that we don't see resistance to antibiotics, we as pediatricians. But we are seeing a lot of resistance. And some people blame it on us pediatricians because kids come in with ear infections and so on and get these antibiotics. But the antibiotics used in humans are just a tiny fraction of the antibiotics used in the United States. The big majority of them actually go to feeding animals, not even to treating sick animals, but to just feeding animals so that they can survive conditions that they normally wouldn't survive because of crowding and disease and being too genetically similar and lots of other things that would cause them to just die, and they still die, some of them, but they wouldn't be able to survive without being given antibiotics on a daily basis. Well, that's a real problem for us as we look at the emergence of resistant bacterial disease.
And bird flu was the last one. People say, oh, you'll get bird flu and we'll all get sick. But bird flu is actually a problem that comes from the big factory farms when they stick hundreds of thousands of birds all together, no sunlight, they're all standing and walking around in their own wastes. They don't get out into the grass, they don't get out in the sun. It's like the perfect condition to breed viruses and germs that mutate terribly. What they found is that small flocks, as soon as you only get down to 30 birds or 10 birds or 6 birds, there's not enough of them to cause those mutation problems. So there's no bird flu problems with small flocks. It's only with the huge factory farms. So actually keeping chickens locally does more to prevent bird flu than it does to spread it. So hopefully people will kind of get past those excuses that they throw out when they're first approached with the idea. Those are the excuses they come up with. But they're excuses, they're not really reasons.